You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody, it is time to rock out on TWIFO This Week in Futures Options. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Radio Network, reminding you, hey, make sure you subscribe to the full network. Otherwise, you're missing out on a whole bunch of other great content, like the sister program to this one, the Futures Rundown. Then, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, join us for awesome pro Q&As, options oddities, where we get up to all sorts of no good. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to find all of that fun. And you know what, listeners? It's the dog days of summer. We're doing just the facts this week as we dive right on into a little bit of the old movers and shakers report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we break down everything, lighting it up to the upside, aka the light side, and to the dark side over there at CME Group this week. And it has been another action-packed week out there. A lot of things driving a lot of different segments of the market out there. Obviously, NVIDIA driving equities, some big moves in the ags, all sorts of fun. So you know what? Let's keep the optimistic tone going. Let's kick things off in a direction I don't usually like to start in. We're going to the light side. We're going green this week, listeners. Number 5 to the light side, we are kicking it off in the ags, man. The ags are ripping this week. By the way, if you follow us at Options on Twitter and most major social media platforms, you will see this chart that we tweet out for you because we like you. It is a definitely green biased week, but that said, it's a fight for the largest percentage mover. I do think actually the dark side is slightly taking it as of right now. So let's get down to business. This is a wild week. It's supposed to be the dog days of summer. Nothing's supposed to be happening, listeners. And yet the markets surprise us. Number 5 to the light side this week, we're going out to wheat. We're going out to KC wheat, up 5 2/3%. This was number 5 in the same direction last week, up also about 5 2/3%. So a good couple of weeks back to back for KC wheat. Number 4, we have the big boy of the ags complex looking really big this week. This is corn, up about 6.8%. It was number 4 in the same direction last week, up about 7%, and just crushing volume, crushing everything out there. Hit a 3-year high yesterday. I think we might have to hit on some corn this week, listeners. This is a wild week for all the corn fans out there. Number 3, it's a frequent offender on the show. It's nat gas. getting back some of that seasonality. Our guest last week saying we do see seasonality start to kick in for the end of the year in nat gas a little bit earlier these days. Maybe we're seeing some of that reflected this week. Number 3, nat gas up 8.3% in the dog days of summer. What's that about? Number 2, it's Chicago wheat up a little over 9% and putting up some numbers this week as well. And then the big boy to the light side this week. Is it the big boy percentage movement wise for the entire week? Well, we'll find out in a minute. It's Bitcoin up about 10.6%, coming on the heels of another week when it was number 1 last week as well, up nearly 15%. A good couple of weeks out here for Bitcoin listeners. And before you get all hot and bothered, say, okay, here we go. We're going to talk crypto and Bitcoin on the show. Fortunately, not the case. Only about 446 contracts going up on the big Bitcoin options this week and about 1,300 of the micros. So not really enough to sink our teeth into out there. We'd love to talk naught but Bitcoin. In fact, we have a whole show that does that. The Crypto Rundown every Monday, listeners. We talk Bitcoin, we talk ETH, we talk Solana, we talk hype. We get very hyped about hype. All sorts of fun, man. Hype blowing away this week as well. So crazy stuff on the crypto front. Just not enough futures options flow for us to sink our teeth into this week. Let's go to the dark side, see what's lighting it up this week, listeners. Number 5, it's soybean oil. They've been catching a bid most of the year, giving some back this week off 4.7%. Number 4, it's Brent off 4.8%. Number 3, heating oil off about 5%. Again, all welcome news to anyone out there who's struggling to fill up their car or perhaps fly on a plane or perhaps heat their house for the winter. Number 2 is WTI off about 5.3%. It was number 2 in the other direction last week, up about 8.4%. And the big boy to the dark side, which is actually just managing to steal the number 1 biggest percentage mover this week. It's platinum off 11.09%. It was number 2 in the same direction last week, off about 5.8%. So a rough couple of weeks for platinum, which is especially interesting given the fact that most of the other precious metals have had a good week and change out there. So we looked at platinum in the past on the show. Again, not a ton of options flow for us to sink our teeth into out there, listeners, in platinum either, unless you're really, really excited about 1,200 contracts. So I think we have to kick things off. And the big thing that is driving the markets right now, of course, we're coming off the heels of NVIDIA earnings, listeners, and all eyes are glued to the equities.
It's time to explore the volatility swings, skew changes, and hot options trades in your favorite indices. It's time to talk equities.
All right, everybody, welcome to the equities. You know where to go to follow along with the show, listeners. CMEGroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. That'll get you to our reports. Once you're there, go into that asset class drop down. Going to go down 4 slots to equity indexes, and then product family, US index, E-mini, and then we are coming hot off the heels of NVIDIA earnings. All eyes are on tech, so we have to go Nasdaq, listeners. That is 2 slots down in the product category. And again, typically a sleepy week. The final full trading week of August. People are gone. People are away for the summer. You don't expect a lot of flow, but the Nasdaq saying, hold my beer this week. Again, a lot of that on the back of NVIDIA last night. Putting up about 180,000 contracts right now, which again is a pretty hot week for the dog days of summer, especially given that for the first few sessions this week, a lot of people were keeping their powder dry ahead of NVIDIA's earnings. So a lot of action out here in the Nasdaq this week. Coming into the start of this segment, we are seeing the Nasdaq a little bit north of 29,500, 29,536 in that future, listeners. Again, puts it up about 0.5% since Monday. Go back to the end of our show last week, a little bit of a different story. And as you might expect, of that roughly 200,000 contracts, we are seeing quite a bit of 0-day flow, and a lot of strikes are lighting it up. The most active strike out there is actually the 29,800 calls. So kind of interesting. Usually we see these round number strikes, but not this week. 29,800 calls going up about 2,500 times. These are not expiring today. They're actually going out tomorrow. So you get a whole whole extra day on these, listeners, which you're probably going to need if you're going to threaten that 29,800 strike. Again, these are over 250 handles out of the money right now. So if you're nibbling on these, you definitely need Nasdaq to get the heck out of gear here. By the way, of that 2,500, 1,500 of these have been trading today. So this is actually a hot strike today. Some folks may be thinking this NVIDIA announcement might drive us up to those levels, or perhaps just taking advantage of some overriding. Either way, opening flow today, about 500 on Monday, and about 150 to 400 the rest of the week each. So interesting, 29,800, 1 day to go. Can we get there, listeners? Outside of the 0-day fun, and it's all the other usual strikes, the 29,600s expiring today are number 2 this week, listeners, with about 2,350 contracts. Again, those are still about 64 handles out of the money, so they need Nasdaq to continue getting the heck out of bed this morning. It was outpacing the S&P by about 2-1 earlier in the session, so Nasdaq definitely where the action is this week. If you get a little bit beyond the 0-day fun, listeners, the most active contract of the week are actually going to the downside. We got the 28,000 puts expiring in 22 days. Looking pretty active this week as well, with about 1,600 contracts on the tape this week. When we drill in a little bit, though, it seems like most of these were closing and most of them went up on Tuesday, about 1,100 or so going up on Tuesday. Prices a little bit north of $200, about $203. So looks like maybe paper deciding discretion is the better part of valor, getting the heck out of these puts before the big NVIDIA announcement. But either way, looks like paper unwinding some downside in the Nasdaq. Again, they have some time, 22 days, but perhaps deciding to live to fight another day. If you want to look for some upside, because we are still rocketing north in the Nasdaq, you got to go all the way out to October, to the October 30,000 calls. That is your next most active upside strike, listeners. Those have changed hands about 1,000 times this week. Almost all of that on Monday, all opening. So someone really rolling the bones for some upside, perhaps, on Monday. That said, these are October, so you have about 64 days to go. Can Nasdaq kiss the 30,000 strike? That isn't that far away, given how much we moved in the Nasdaq, listeners. 60 days, is that enough? Do you like these calls, listeners? The 30,000 strike? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know. But now it's time for us to dive on into the other big complex that is really lighting up the tape this week. Not one we get a chance to talk about a lot on the show, so it should be interesting. It is time to sink our teeth into the ags.
It's time to get our hands dirty exploring the latest options trades and trends in corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. It's time to talk ags.
All right, listeners, pop out of that equity drop down. You're going to go all the way to the top of the list. It is an alpha order list after all. And then we're going to start in the big boy. This is corn, and man, corn is bringing the heat this week. You know, we love all of our guests on the show, but I do love when I get the opportunity to drive the boat myself, because I get to steer it into some fun waters. And quite often, most of our guests on the show will come to us and say, we'll talk about anything but ags. So getting people to talk about ags these days, kind of like pulling teeth, with the exception of our good buddy Dan the Man Grams. He'll talk about just about anything. And Carly's usually game for some ags talk as well, but they're kind of the two exceptions to the rule out there. So I see a lot of you out there asking for ags. Unfortunately, again, it's like pulling teeth for a lot of folks these days, but not when I'm driving the ship, listeners. Let's get our hands dirty with some ags, listeners. And again, corn is inescapable this week. Corn coming off of 3-year highs just yesterday, and that is reflected in the volume. They said quiet dog days of summer, the hell with that. Corn usually does a good week, 400, maybe 500,000 contracts. You start getting really active, 600, 750. If you're getting close to 1 million, you know the game is afoot. Something's crazy, a crop report, something else is going on. Throw all that out the window, closing in on 1.4 million contracts right now in corn. So corn says sleepy summer months. I don't know what you're talking about. Corn is bringing the heat right now. What's driving all this corn action? A bunch of different things. We have seen some wild crop reports of late, including some predictions for crop yields that I think surprised some people. Those shrinking yields, I think, leading to some of these 3-year highs. Also, of course, there's still some severe weather going around the country and indeed around the globe. And of course, things in and around Ukraine and the Black Sea, which is a big exporter of a lot of wheat and indeed other agricultural products out there, seem to be ratcheting it up out there. So you got kind of a 1-2-3 punch that is driving a lot of green in the green sector, aka the ags, listeners. So let's get down to business, because this is a heck of a lot of flow. Almost exactly half, 49.6% of this corn flow is going up in the D's contract. So they're saying the hell with 0 day. We're going out to the D's. That's 85 days away, listeners. By the way, that front corn future, 531.5, up about 23 handles or 4.5%. Just since Monday, up nearly 7%. You go back to the end of our show last week. So again, I can't remember the last time we saw this much flow in corn. It's been quite some time, listeners. What is the vol, you might be asking yourself, in corn? It's at about a 25.60, up about only a third of a point in that D's contract. You get a little more near dated, you go out about a month or so. It's about a 26, 28, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on the exact cycle. You go a little bit farther out, you go into January of next year, the vol falls off a cliff, 15 to roughly 17.5. So quite the vol spectrum on the term structure out there, which again is what makes the ags somewhat interesting. Skew wise, as you might imagine, it's all upside all the time. The calls 2.4% bid last week, 8.8% bid this week. So folks are loving themselves some calls, and they are not liking the puts. The puts were flat last week, 10.1% discounted this week. So that's an old school precious metal skew sneaking in there, listeners. Almost 10% bid to the upside, over 10% discounted to the downside. This is the good old days of gold and silver when all anybody wanted was upside for days. And let's see what folks do want here, listeners, this week. And again, it's just a rock'em sock'em robots week for corn. It's the 5 halves, the 550s that are leading the dance by a country mile. About 75,000 of these have already changed hands. I haven't gone and pulled up silver, but I'm sure that's probably roughly 2 to 3x what's gone up in silver already. You're talking only about 100,000 less than the entirety of the Nasdaq complex on a fairly active week. It's a pretty active contract here for corn. And it's been active most of the week, nearly 30,000 out of the gate on Monday, mostly opening there. About 32,000 yesterday, 9,500 today, 4,500 on Tuesday. A total OI of about 56,000. So that is wild flow out here for corn, listeners. 5 halves, again, about 19 handles out of the money right now on that front future. It's been a good week this week. If it can rally another 20 odd handles like they did this week, they'll pretty much be there. So 5 halves by December, that doesn't sound like a entirely out of the realm of possibility trade. Listen, let's go a little bit of digging right now, see if we can find what these are going for. The 5 halves trading today right around $20 on average. So again, 5 halves, obviously, if you're buying those, you have to get to 570 by D's expiration. You've got 85 days to get there. If all these factors continue for just a few more weeks, you don't need it to continue all the way to December. Obviously, if things intensify in and around the Black Sea, if the weather persists and these yields continue to come in under estimates, then you could easily be kissing that strike in just a month or so out here. So interesting stuff out here. I'm curious what you folks think about these. Are you down for a little bit of corn upside? Again, it isn't that far out of the money. Wild flow here in corn. Number 2, if you think, I want something maybe a little bit more reasonable, perhaps, dare I say it, at the money. How about the 530s? These have changed hands 53,000 times this week. The big day for these was actually Monday. So it is possible we saw a bit of a roll on Monday because you have 26,000 of the 530s going up. Those were mostly closing against 29,000 of the 5 halves, mostly opening there. So could be a little bit of a roll going on there. The rest of the week, it doesn't quite line up if they did it on Wednesday, it'd be almost 2x. It's about 19,000 of the 530s against 31, almost 32,000 of the 5 halves. So interesting. It is possible we are seeing some roll action there, but either way, 53,000 of the 530s going up this week. And then number 3, let's go out to even more upside, a little bit farther up the chain. 550s, you're saying pshaw. How about the pars, the 600s? Those have changed hands nearly 40,000 times this week. The big boy, though, was actually Wednesday. It was actually yesterday, a little over 20,000 going up. It's like paper potentially closing on some of these. 6,800 today, almost 10,000 on Monday opening then, and about 3,000 on Tuesday also opening. So some back and forth flow. Perhaps they're still coming into today about 24,000 open on the strike, even if they were bailing on 20,000 yesterday. So interesting stuff. Again, a lot of upside. You can't really blame them here in corn, given the price action we've seen out here of late. All right, you know what? We don't get the chance to talk ags too much here on the show. So let's wrap it up on this Just the Facts, man, by going to our number 2 biggest mover on the week. Listen, let's go out to Chicago wheat, aka SRW wheat. You're going to pop out of corn in that product family. You're going to go down 1 slot to wheat, and then product SRW wheat. Listeners, is it a hot week for SRW wheat? Yeah, it's 220,000 contracts. That's definitely respectable. It's not corn doing 3x, almost 4x. It's ADV out there, but it's a respectable week nonetheless. And again, percentage movement wise, wheat is delivering. That front future at a 758 as we're kicking off this segment, up nearly 60 handles, or about 8.5%. Just since Monday, go back to the end of our show last week, it's up over 9%. So a banger week out there. And looks like most of the action this week, about 40%, is centered in the October contract that has about 29 days to go. We're going to hang out there as well. The vol in October wheat's at about a 33.70, up about a third of a point. So again, the comparative vol levels in these ag products is always very fascinating. Everyone's always drilling down on S&P vol, aka the VIX, and maybe the vols of some of these energy products like WTI or nat gas, or perhaps into crypto or some of these other ones. We don't get a chance to talk ag vol very often, so I wanted to give you some frame of reference for how these are stacking up right now. Again, we're just talking on the option block earlier today, S&P vol shy of a 15. So you're talking more than 2x right now in wheat. If you're looking for a little bit more juice, perhaps the ags are where you should be looking. Skew wise, once again, we have what looks like an old school precious metals skew. It's all calls all the time. Nobody wants to touch the puts. The calls last week, 7.6% bid. This week, 8.4% bid. The puts last week, 2.9% discounted. They crushed them this week down to 9% discounted. So very aggressive upside skew, which again, very favorable if you want to come in here and nibble and want some very tight collars. You can get tight protection, let the upside run a little bit. It's an ideal setup for collars. Might be worth a gander out here in both corn and wheat right now, listeners. Where else can you go and get cheap, tight protection and let the upside run for a bit and have it all cost you pretty much next to nothing? Let's see what is lighting up the tape out here in a very banger week out here in wheat. It's the 7 halves, the 750s. Now in the money calls, we're at about a 758, like I said, listeners, in that front future. These have changed hands almost 9,000 times this week. The big day was yesterday, 3,800 yesterday, 2,200 on Monday, and about 2,200 on Tuesday as well. So closing Monday and Tuesday, potentially opening on Wednesday, only about 500 and change today against an OI of 5,100. So 7 halves, again, these are already in the money. So that probably explains why we maybe saw some closing earlier in the week. Maybe some folks looking to roll somewhere else. But again, opening again on Wednesday, which is also kind of surprising and or interesting. Right behind it, we have 5,700 of the pars, the 800s. The big day for those yesterday and today, 2,600 today, 2,200 yesterday. So interesting size opening on the 7 halves and the 800s, the pars yesterday as well in Chicago wheat. So it's not a roll. Is it a stupid? Is it a ladder? Is it just a lot of love? We also see the 760s going up yesterday as well, 3,600 times. So looks like some wild flow out here in Chicago wheat. yesterday, listeners. See if we can dig into that really quickly, see if we have any crazy ladders or flies going up out there. A 727.60 call 1x2 traded yesterday in October, so that could be accounting for some of those 760s we're seeing. It's just a lot of weird strikes lighting it up. By the way, if you're wondering, that 1x2 going up for $1.24 credit. So they collected $1.24 to do. Also saw the 7.5 760 call spread. That makes more sense. Okay, those line up pretty close to 1-to-1. That went up about 1,000 times at least yesterday for around $3. So if you're wondering, listeners, 7.5 760 call spread, maybe you like that $10 call spread for about $3. A little tight for my taste, but hey, if you're down for that type of vertical, perhaps that floats your boat. We also did see the 7.5 800 call spread going up for $11. That one might make a little bit more sense, listeners. If you want to give yourself some room to run, and that also explains why such disparate strikes, 750, 760, and 800s, were all lighting it up yesterday in Chicago wheat. All right, and that music means we have come to the end of our Just the Facts, Ma'am journey here on TWIFO this week. You know, sometimes it's fun to have a little bit of a sojourn into the complexes we don't get a chance to talk about too often here on the show. And this week, the ags certainly were undeniable out there. Very interesting stuff. If any of you delved into these waters of late, I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know, listeners. And obviously, equities always stealing a lot of minds and hearts out there as well. Don't worry, we're not done on the network today, listeners. Back again after the closing bell to talk all things the Hot Options Report. And then back tomorrow to wrap up the week with a whole bunch of vol talk. Who's going to join us with Dr. Vic's out for his vacation extravaganza sojourn out there? Got to tune in to find out. Should be a fun one, listeners. And then, of course, back for all of our pro friends where we have a whole bunch of fun. Yeah, it's Options Oddities time. Check it out, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And then back again next week, all the way through to next Thursday, another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.